This is almost certainly the weirdest Square-1 ever made, and yet it's surprisingly simple. I think this puzzle was definitely worth coming back to the city for. But from your perspective, did I ever leave? For the 5th time, we have arrived at the Puzzle Advent Calendar. This is a yearly collaboration in the puzzle and cubing YouTube communities to feature 24 never-before-seen original puzzles in daily videos throughout December. So don't forget to subscribe to the next person in the series linked below. And also check out the playlist of the entire series. This is the Shattered Square-1, which at first glance appears to be a mirror Square-1 with the layers offset by 180 degrees, curved horizontal cuts, and no visible cut through the central layer. The central layer cut is actually diagonal, such that it doesn't go through any stickered faces. You might be wondering what's so special about this puzzle, so let's look at it scrambled. Needless to say, this puzzle works very differently from what you likely expected. The Shattered Square-1's appearance when scrambled gives it its name in that the puzzle just looks like it's disintegrating. And in a way, I think it looks a bit like three-dimensional stained glass. The two color scheme I have on the puzzle means that it solves just like a Square-1, but is incredibly trippy to maneuver and perform algorithms on. Anyway, let's take a look at how we got to the Shattered Square-1. For a very long time, I've wanted to make a puzzle that externally looks normal, but has skewed axes internally so it turns at an offset angle from what you would actually expect. The Square-1 is a decent candidate for this concept because its mechanism is incredibly basic, consisting of just two identical layers distributed on either side of a wide 1x1x2. The one downside of using a Square-1 is that the vertical turn is deep cut, meaning it divides the puzzle exactly in half. This isn't brilliant because it means even if I offset the top and bottom layer axes, the vertical cuts have to remain on the same axis, and this would result in them being visually tilted. Here's an earlier prototype of the Shattered Square-1 where you can see this more clearly. You can see none of these cuts go straight up or straight down. This is an issue because deep cuts typically can't be curved or manipulated and must be straight. I say typically because in certain situations you can manipulate skewed cuts, and off the top of my head I believe it's also possible to have curved Square-1 vertical cuts, although that's complicated and I didn't want to combine two different new concepts on the same puzzle. So what did I do about this issue? Actually, pretty much nothing. If you look really closely you can see that the cuts are still tilted in there, just like on the prototype. However, I used variable fillets and perfectly vertical stickers to give the illusion from a distance that the puzzle has vertical cuts. The first puzzle I made from this concept was the Phantom Square-1. The top layer looked almost perfectly normal, but unfortunately the bottom layer ended up looking bumped. This was inevitable since the top and bottom layers shared the same axis of rotation, visible by the fact that they don't move when I turn only the middle layer. This meant I couldn't make the offset angle anything crazy, because then the bottom layer would have been severely disfigured. But even after completing the Phantom Square-1, I wanted to realize my original vision of having a more extreme looking offset. And a bit later, I discovered a breakthrough that allows me to do this. Pay attention to what happens when I move the middle layer of the Shattered Square-1. The outer layers actually move relative to each other. This should give away the trick. I discovered that the Square-1 doesn't actually need its layers to share an axis of rotation. So I designed a new mechanism in which they just don't share an axis. You can see that parts moving on the top layer are actually significantly offset from parts moving on the bottom layer. However, the layers do still have rotational symmetry around a central axis, so that after a vertical turn, everything still lines up properly, so you can continue making turns. You can see that on my original prototype, this offset was actually significantly more extreme than on the final shattered Square-1. But if I were to make a vertical turn from this state, parts would fall out because just nothing would hold them in. So I had to find a balance between, shock factor and usability for this design. This is also the reason for the highly unconventional mechanism in the final puzzle with 2 feet. You have one at the top here and one at the bottom here. This ensures that at least some mechanism is holding the piece into the puzzle at any given time. So those are the origins and concepts behind the shattered Square-1. Now let's build it. Alright, this is turning pretty well, so the next step is going to be for me to design a box for this puzzle. Because I've tried it out, and I think this box is just way too big. And then I'll use the box to sand down all of the stickered faces of this puzzle on the belt sander, and then we'll go from there. After finishing the belt sanding of the shattered Square-1, I finished the puzzle off just by using some normal sanding techniques for a little bit. Afterwards, I sprayed the puzzle with clear coat. This time I did a new drying technique that Jason suggested to me last time, which was to actually just get a heat gun and essentially hold it near the puzzle for, 30 or so seconds, and then the clear coat would dry it. I did, honestly by chance, at a hardware store get a heat gun. It was a lot cheaper than I expected, $25. I read the instructions. Obviously if you get one, do the same. On mine, the appropriate setting was low in order to heat the clear coat up to dry it, but not totally blast everything with heat. Obviously the heat gun is a tool with which you could very easily hurt yourself, so don't use it lightly, and take every necessary safety precaution if you use one, including eye, face, and ear protection, and hand protection. But all that aside, it was really straightforward to spray the puzzle up, and then dry the clear coat. Just like last time I tried spray painting a puzzle with clear coat, some of the sides got a little bit too much paint, which resulted in them being a little lumpy in some areas, but that doesn't bother me too much. I think once the stickers are on, it'll be all fine. Speaking of the stickers, let's take a look at them real quick. So this is going to be a 2-color puzzle. So I have 2 colors here. Do you want to guess what the manufacturer calls them? Who, by the way, this is Cricut vinyl. Apparently their vinyl cutters are not very good, or at least the ecosystem, but these vinyls are, they have their pros and cons, but I'm using them right now. So yeah, did you guess what colors these are called? Alright, so this one, obviously, how could you not get this? This one's pink, and this one's opal. Now, I believe the way this is formulated is the respective colors are actually somewhere under there, and then there's just a layer that reflects light in different ways that's pasted on top of it. and that creates the different colors that you see here. I have two main issues with this vinyl, and I'll show you on the Phantom Square-1. I don't know how well you can tell just from looking at it through the camera lens, but basically these puzzles show fingerprints incredibly easily. Like, I've solved this maybe twice, 3 times, and the entire puzzle is just covered with fingerprints, and you can tell. So if you're a clean freak, it's going to be a constant game of wiping everything off. And the other thing is, this vinyl scratches pretty easily. Once again, I don't know how well this comes across. You can kind of see it here. But yeah, basically, this vinyl just scratches really easily, so you have to be careful with it, not to like drag it around on a table or something. Or maybe not drag other puzzles on top of it. And also, if the underlying vinyl has any scratches or anything, which again, these, you probably can't see them very well, but the underlying vinyl is not perfect that you buy. So it's kind of a losing game trying to get these things to be perfect. I think the vinyl just looks good, so that's why I'm using it. But if I were to sell some of these puzzles, I would definitely try and offer some solid color versions, because I can understand not everyone wants to deal with the frustrations of this holographic vinyl. But yeah, now it's time to sticker up the Shattered Square-1. You might notice that, as I mentioned earlier, these cuts aren't perfectly vertical, and the idea is to actually cover that up with the stickers so that you can't tell that the puzzle's angles are all askew. So I'm not going to film that because this is a very precise job and I don't want to have to reach around the camera like I usually do. Yeah, that's about it. Honestly, I'll see you again when it's time to take this puzzle outside and see how it turned out. Overall, I'd say I'm pretty satisfied with how the Shattered Square-1 turned out. There are some pros and some cons, so let's go over those. With the pros, I'm happy that I was finally able to create a Square-1 type puzzle where if you turn the top and bottom layers, they are offset at a pretty crazy angle. This is what I was originally going for with the Phantom Square-1, but that puzzle ended up being kind of a compromise because I couldn't quite figure out just yet that I didn't need to have the top and bottom layers share an axis. Another pro is I think this 2-color scheme actually turned out super nicely. As much as I have complained about the stickers scratching easily or holding fingerprints, I actually really love the way these stickers look. Just the fact that changing the lighting around the puzzle or turning the puzzle at a different angle changes the color honestly makes it really visually stunning, and I really like that aspect of it. I'm not sure if there's any other holographic vinyl colors that I'd like to try out. From what I remember, these were probably the ones that provided the best contrast for a 2-color scheme. I don't know if there's enough colors to make for a 6-color scheme if for whatever reason I were to need that. It's not the best turning Square-1 I've ever made, and that's just because of this unconventional mechanism it has. I couldn't really give this puzzle a normal Square-1 mechanism due to the fact that the axes are so offset, and this mechanism that it does have ended up being kind of a compromise. And honestly, if you turn the puzzle a certain way and push on parts a certain way, you can still get pieces actually falling out of the puzzle. It's not bad enough to the point where I was worried about it mid-solve, and during the solve, genuinely, I was fairly comfortable. But at the same time, this design isn't something I'd consider fully ready to sell, for example, so I definitely have to go back to the drawing board for that. But as an experiment, I'm super happy with the way this turned out. It's been many months since I designed this, and I don't remember if there would have feasibly been a way to have the vertical turns be straight cuts as opposed to curve cuts. If that was possible, then that would honestly be the ultimate aesthetic for this puzzle. But based on what I remember of me designing this, I don't think that's possible. So I think these curve cuts are a decent enough compromise. Overall, I am really satisfied with how the Shattered Square-1 turned out. The wow factor is absolutely insane. So to see how that looks, let's scramble the puzzle. In a few minutes anyway. One of my favorite things about this puzzle is the fact that when it's all scrambled up like this, or even after you make a few turns, it honestly just looks like parts from completely unrelated puzzles are just mishmashed together on the same cube. Like, do these parts look at all like they belong next to each other? I'd say no. Or for example, these. Just look at how skewed everything is. This looks absolutely ridiculous. Alright, so as with any Square-1, the first step is going to be getting all of the edges next to each other. And from there we're going to easily get it back into a cubic shape. As much as it doesn't look the part, this is actually the position where all of the edges are next to each other on the Shattered Square-1, and then the other face consists only of corners. Again, this looks absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, from here we can easily get it back to a cubic shape. Well, that's the first step completed. The Shattered Square-1 is now in cubic shape. We are obviously using a very liberal interpretation of the meaning of cubic shape. This edge is kind of just in there somewhere. I don't know. This is as good as it's getting in terms of cubic shape for this thing. Alright, so from here I'm going to just use Square-1 methods to solve this. Probably not going to have too much commentary. This, after all, is going to solve exactly like a Square-1. For a second, I thought I failed at getting all of the parts oriented because I saw this here. I was like, oh, damn it. And then I realized, no, this thing is just really weird. Actually, this almost looks solved. Yeah, here we are. See? This layer is actually solved, except just these two parts are opposite each other. Obviously this layer is a lot more messed up. Like, I'm not even in a rush to solve this, I'm just enjoying looking at this thing mid-solve. I don't know why these stickers are called pink. I guess just somewhere under the vinyl material there is pink in there, but honestly this looks way more like purple or gold or something like that to me. Can I get it to look gold on camera? Yeah, here you go. It looks gold right there. Definitely very fun vinyl to look at, although it attracts fingerprints quite easily. And now we have all of the corners solved, so all I now have to do is just maneuver the edges around. I will say the fact that this is only a 2-color cube, so that means that the color here can be shared here, that does trip me up a bit actually. There have been a couple times where I've looked at this and thought I messed up something, but no, that's just the nature of a cube. Really interesting stuff. Okay, the top layer is complete, or I guess the blue layer, opal layer, whatever you want to call this. And then on here I just have to recycle around these edges. Alright, and now I have the outer layers solved, and then I just have to maneuver around the inner layer. So let's do that real quick. I believe I just need to flip it around, right? So I do like something like this, and then like that. Yeah, how do you like the offsets created by moving the middle layer? Did that do it, or do I have to do the other maneuver? Nope, that did it. Alright, the shattered Square-1 is solved. Honestly, you might have noticed that I was taking some of the turns really just smoothly and softly. That's because I was super scared of messing up some moves, because this puzzle is super trippy to look at. I think I really like this 2-color scheme I have. I think the different colors complement each other pretty well with this nice purple, violet, pink, whatever, and this blue-ish color. Sky blue, opal, purple, not so much purple, although occasionally. Yeah, I think it turned out super nice. I finished this puzzle way before. I made this probably in the first half of this year and just never got around to filming it. And I'm really glad to finally be able to show this absolutely insane puzzle to all of you. Don't forget to subscribe to the next person in the advent calendar so you don't miss the next video. Check out the playlist. Thank you all very much for watching, and have a great day.